The countdown continues to South Africa's national elections scheduled for the 29th of May. Various polls conducted over the past few months are forecasting that the African National Congress might see a decline in support. Will the €112 bond between brand ANC and its followers be enough to see the party through in 2024? For more on this, we're joined by former ANC NEC Member Pallo Jordan. Appreciate your time. How was the ANC's historical performance spanning from the Mandela era to the present influence its brand image? Mr. Jordan,
can hear you.
Hi, Mr. Jordan. Good afternoon. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Thanks for speaking to us. Let's start off with the ANC's historical performance going from the era of Nelson Mandela to the present and how it's influenced its brand image over time.
Yes.
Did you get my question?
What do you want to know?
How has the ANC's historical performance spanning from the Mandela era to the present influence its brand image and resonance amongst South Africans?
Well, when the ANC came into political office in 1994, it had never been a government anywhere in the world before that. So it was a novice in government. And in terms of that, I suppose everyone gave it 100% chance. The next election, the ANC increased its majority quite markedly, and that was owing to its performance in that first 5 years. The following 5 years, I think the ANC performed very well as government. People were so impressed that the elections after that, the ANC made over a 2/3 majority. I would say the ANC's image in government began to decline after that third general election, and perhaps it's a question of performance in government, perhaps it's a question of personnel, perhaps it's a question of a much more complicated international and national situation. We tend to want to isolate South Africa from the rest of the world when we talk about the political fortunes of this country. But we have to remember that we are now fully integrated into the international system, much more so than in the past, and the pressures that will occur in other parts of the world impact on South Africa. But despite all the problems that we've had, economic meltdown and so on, I think the ANC has run South Africa's ship moderately well. Our country hasn't collapsed, and the impact of the international economic pressures have not been that great.
All right, so you speak about running it moderately well, and I suppose moderate is average. And whilst there are certain things that we can attribute to what's happening in global markets, such as the rise in fuel prices, there's a lot of stuff that the ANC has got to be responsible for. Corruption scandals, too numerous to mention, governance issues. How do you think these factors will impact the ANC's performance? And does the ANC desire to correct these challenges that they've had?
You see, the trouble with politics is that I am corrupt. I'm not saying I am, but I'm saying, for example, I would be corrupt, but then people attribute that to the political organization I belong to. There are corrupt people in the ANC, but it would be incorrect to say the ANC is corrupt. So take, for example, what has happened with Joe Biden in the United States. His son is accused of all sorts of mischief, and it's attributed to Joe Biden. He has nothing to do with it. Same thing happens with the ANC. Someone in the ANC is corrupt, it's attributed to the ANC. And that is actually improper. You must say Mr. So-and-so is corrupt. Mr. So-and-so is a member of the ANC. That is correct. To say Mr. So-and-so is corrupt, therefore the ANC is corrupt, I mean, that's logical nonsense.
I have to disagree, Mr. Jordan, and allow me to put this before you.
No, sure. It's your program.
The ANC has the liberty and every right to dissociate itself from the very members that are corrupt that you suggest. But we don't see much of this happening. Now, if they do not dissociate themselves from the very members who are continually corrupt and are before the courts of law, then invariably the ANC is going to be viewed as a corrupt institution.
No, I'm not saying that people don't, I'm not saying people don't draw those conclusions. What I am saying, it is logical nonsense to say, for example, right, Aristotle is a man, Aristotle is mortal, therefore all men are mortal. That is logical nonsense. You can say, right, all men are mortal, Aristotle is a man, therefore Aristotle is mortal. That is logical.
So
the other is logical nonsense. No, people think that way, to be sure. You'll be stained with the brush of the people you associate with, which is why I drew the example of Joe Biden.
Okay, well, let's not be philosophical. Let's talk about the ANC, because we do have issues. We have the Zondo Commission that raised multiple issues of state capture, which the ANC has not exposed.
ANC people were involved in. That is the correct statement. Not the ANC. ANC people were involved in.
But is the ANC not a movement of individuals? Some of whom have been involved in these corrupt activities.
No. Look, let's get, unless you want to go back and forth, like a ping pong on this issue of whether we are corrupt or not corrupt, let's go on to something else. We're not going to agree on this because you're not prepared to follow rational, logical reasoning. I say to you, all men are mortal. Aristotle is a man, therefore Aristotle is mortal. That is logic. To say Aristotle is a man, right, Aristotle is mortal, therefore all men are mortal, is nonsense. That's what you are doing. Mr. So-and-so is a member of the ANC. Mr. So-and-so is corrupt, therefore the ANC is corrupt. That's logical nonsense.
Well, I suppose we will have to differ on that, Mr. Jordan. But
No, that's logical nonsense. Turn it around and you'll see yourself it's logical nonsense. Now let's talk about something else.
Now the ANC supporters have absconded from voting in recent years due to despondency. How significant is this voter apathy, and what strategies do you think the ANC could employ to re-engage disenchanted supporters?
I don't know whether you follow elections in other parts of the world. The rate of participation of South African voters in elections is far, far higher than you'd say in the UK, Germany, France, or the United States. As democracies mature, you tend to find that voter participation declines. Maybe because voters are happy with the government that they have and they think, well, why bother? Maybe because they're unhappy with the government they have. But the rate at which our people participate in elections far exceeds the rate in other parts of the world. I'm not bothered by what you call voter apathy. People don't vote for a number of reasons. Sometimes they don't vote because they're unhappy. Sometimes they don't vote because they couldn't care. Sometimes they don't vote because they are happy. Now, what is the ANC going to do about its own supporters coming out to vote on election day? You go out and you mobilize them, as we've always done throughout the years. That's how you do it.
Now, there's been much talk about the ANC's numbers falling below 50% in the upcoming elections. How do you think political party landscape...
That's a speculation, which I consider a very wide speculation, a wild speculation which comes from opinion surveys run by people who are committed to the opposition party.
Well,
You saw
I think for purposes of this conversation, Mr.
Hang on. You saw the report the other day about 3 opinion survey companies that are run by DA supporters. And they come up with this figure, the ACE is going to get less than 30%. It might be true, it might be untrue. But I don't trust those ones. If you gave me an opinion survey by someone who's completely independent, that I trust. Someone who's affiliated and linked to another political party, I'm sure I'm skeptical about it.
So my question is not based on any particular survey, but the possibility of the ANC falling below 50% is there. Now, if it does happen,
hang on,
allow me to ask my question.
I can hear you clearly.
Okay, I'll say
50, 50.
50%, yes.
50.
Now, with the rise of opposition parties and the possibility of a coalition government, if the ANC support dips below 50%, how do you think this political landscape will affect the ANC's chances of retaining power?
Well, if the ANC's falls below 50%, obviously, that's a new ballgame. Well, if the ANC wants to go into coalition, that's something it would consider. I'm not particularly enamored with the idea of coalitions. But what we should also remember, which seems to be forgotten by all you political commentators, is that we've had coalitions governments since 1994. The first democratic government was a coalition of the ANC, the NP, and the IFP. The second one was a coalition of IFP and ANC. So was the third one. It was the fourth and the fifth governments after that that haven't been coalitions. But we've had coalitions in South Africa before. But everyone talks as if this is something new to the South African political landscape. It's not.
Now, President Cyril Ramaphosa has invoked ANC's history to appeal to voters, particularly focusing on its role in ending apartheid. How effective do you think this strategy will be in convincing voters to support the ANC, despite issues around its recent performance?
Despite
the ANC's recent performance.
I didn't hear the question. Let's repeat it.
Cyril Ramaphosa has invoked... Hello, can you hear me?
Yeah, Cyril has invoked the ANC's role in ending apartheid.
To appeal,
and then?
He's invoked the ANC's history to appeal to voters, particularly its role in focusing on the ending apartheid. And my question is, how important is this in gathering or garnering support from voters?
How important is the ANC's role? It's essential. Look, if the ANC hadn't been there and hadn't struggled for all those years, we wouldn't have democracy. We wouldn't even be having this discussion, would we?
But the issue, Mr.
The fact of the matter, the hard facts of history are that the ANC led the struggle for democracy in this country. We finally succeeded in that struggle by having a democratic election in '94. And because of the role the ANC had played in that struggle for democracy, the electorate rewarded the ANC with stunning electoral victories 3 times in a row. So it's important that, that dimension of our history. We don't forget it. The ordinary people don't forget it. The political commentators all forget it, but that's another story.
I don't think it's about forgetting it, Mr. Jordan. The issue is you have a grouping of individuals that weren't around before 1994, so that did not experience apartheid. And I suppose the question is, for those that are voting for the very first time, how relatable are those issues to them when they haven't experienced them?
Well, that's a different question. Well, I don't know. They'll tell us. And they'll tell us by voter behavior. What I will say is that in interaction with younger voters, oh my God, in interacting with younger voters, one notices that they haven't forgotten the role that the ANC played in the past. And very often they will invoke it. And they'll say to you, if the ANC played this wonderful role in the past, how come you guys seem to be messing up now? You see? And things like that. So I would say that that dimension of the ANC system is very important.